Last week we spoke about one of the two things that you find common in Hajj, but then when you come back, those two things start dwindling, fading away, and at one point disappear. Do you remember what I spoke about last week? Yes, what is? Yeah, the moment you put your ihram on, you're basically like very cautious. Am I right? That's what we spoke about last week. إياكم ومحقرات الذنوب. Very careful about, did this break your ihram? Is this wajib? Do you have to pay dam? Do you have to give fidya? Do you have to give sadaqah? Everyone's very careful that in the state of ihram. That cautiousness that you bring, that being careful, when you're in the state of ihram in Makkah and Medina, especially in Makkah and then the days of Hajj, many times does not translate when we get back home. And if that stayed translated, it would have been better for us. The second thing that I find very common in Hajj, and which is very ironic because I'm going to share a hadith with you today of the Prophet ﷺ. You find that people that you get this question so often in Hajj, and you very rarely get this when you come back to America or anywhere else in the world. And that is, people are very intrigued by and want to know how the Prophet did something. Where did the Prophet stand, sallallahu in Arafah? Where did he make dua? How did he put his ihram on? When he did jamarat, how did he stone the jamarat? Where did he start tawaf from? Where did he pray his sunnah after tawaf? They're asking someone who you never would ever think that this person will be so careful about the sunnah of the Prophet. I mean, it happens in Arafah all the time. Every time you go, there's a group of people who will come to you, because when you go to Arafah, inshallah, all of us go for Hajj, say inshallah. When the mindset, the vision that we have in our mind of Arafah is that of, it's a large plain, and there's a mountain, and it's hot, and you're going to stand there and make dua. When you get there, if you're in my group, you have a tent. And if you're in Sheikh Abdullah's group, which is close to Shaitan, you have right? In his group, you have another level of you have more of a structure, okay? So when you get there, even in my group, there's a tent. People get kind of shocked when they get there. There's a tent here, there's beds here, there's AC. And then they start asking, where's the mountain of Arafah? Okay? Then you say, why you care about the mountain of Arafah? The whole thing is Arafah. No, but where did the Prophet make dua? Wallahi, there's always a huge group of people that apparently when you see them before and after, you could just see they're apparently, wallahu a'lam, I'm just saying, I'm not saying judging anyone by appearances or judging anyone by what they're doing, but you can just tell that, this, level of attention to detail of the Prophet's life is not in their life, or not even in my life. But when you get there, they're saying, but I want to make dua where the Prophet made dua. All right, that's what I want to do. And it's hard to tell them not to, because they're bringing the Prophet's name in there now. And it comes in a hadith of the Prophet in Sahih Muslim. It's a clear hadith. The Prophet was rahmatul lil alameen, meaning everything he did was a source of mercy for everybody. So the moment he did nahar, he did sacrifice, he looked at everyone around him. He knew that they're going to look at him, and they're going to look at the place where he did sacrifice. And for the rest of humanity, anyone who comes who follows the Prophet's sunnah is going to want to do it there. You understand what I'm saying? And then imagine 1 million people going to that exact same spot to do nahar. That would have been difficult. Do you know what he said? Nahartu hahuna wa mina kulluha manharun. Look, I sacrificed my animal here, but the entire Mina is a place of sacrifice. Made it easy for all of us. Made it clear for us. Then he says, فَانْحَرُوا فِي رِحَالِكُمْ. Now you all sacrifice in your own places, wherever you are in Mina. وَوَقَفْتُ هَاهُنَا. Then he explained, in Arafah, this is where I stood and made dua. وَعَرَفَةُ كُلُّهَا مَوْقِفٌ. But the entire Arafah is a place where you can make dua. This you can't explain to that person over there. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because the Prophet knew, like Umar ibn Khattab knew. What did he know when he came to Palestine? When they asked him to, when the priest asked him to pray salah over here, he says, you know what, if I pray salah in this church, I know what's going to happen after, People are going to take the church and make it into a masjid. I'm not going to pray here. And then he prayed outside the church. And now over there, there's a masjid called Masjid Umar. So the Prophet ﷺ knew this. So he said, well, I'm standing here and making dua, but the entire Arafah is a place where you can make dua. Then he says, and when he was in Muzdalifah, he says, وَوَقَفْتُ هَاهُنَا, I'm staying right here. وَجَمْعٌ كُلُّهَا مُوقِفٌ. However, the entire Muzdalifah is a place where you can stay. Even though this is what the Prophet ﷺ said, there are many times in Hajj, he was doing something, but he let others do something differently. He did Hajj Qiran, but he told everybody to do a different Hajj. Tamattu. He said, go ahead, do Umrah. But he stayed in Ihram for 4 days before Hajj. Right? All of this dialogue is there. However, the attention to detail in Hajj for people who go there to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Wallah, you would go for Jamarat. In my group, they'd be like, okay, so Shaykh, how did the Prophet stone the shaitan? How did he stone the shaitan? And I said, you really want to know? He's like, yeah. Why? Because you're doing this once in your life. You want to get it right. And somehow you understand in that moment that the way to get it right is to follow the Prophet's Sunnah. You get it right there. You know it then. So I said, well, the way the Prophet stoned shaitan, I would get one of you to stand to pretend you're shaitan, but that's a problem. I did that in my other class, so I know you guys will get offended, so I'm not going to do that. But the way he would turn, his left shoulder would be facing Mecca, and his right shoulder will be facing Mina. So there's where you stand and hit stone the Jamarat. And he did that every single day. Left shoulder facing Mecca, right shoulder facing Mina. And he said, he did takbir and he stoned the shaitan 7 times. I told him, this is how you do it. SubhanAllah, like, no one's like, well, the shaitan, like how we like, well, that's sunnah. No, everyone's like, that's how I want to do it now. That's how I want to do it. I'm doing exactly like that. So this attention to detail for the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, brothers and sisters, for some reason, you and I, and everyone that we know, except for those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed, for some reason, when we come back to America, when we come back to our daily lives, it goes from like attention to detail about how the Prophet did it to something that is just optional. But that's not how the Sunnah is supposed to be treated in our lives. If we could treat Sunnah the way we treat Sunnah in Ihram, wallah, we'd be successful. And how does that start? It starts with, the first thing about Sunnah is tawqir. What is it? Tawqir, not the name, in Urdu there's a name Tawqir, not that guy, okay? Waqar and Azama. Allah in the Quran, He speaks about Hajj and the arkan of Hajj, and He uses the word وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِنْ تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. A person who has ta'zeem, azama, greatness, awe of Allah, and the signs of Allah, and the ibadah, and the things that lead to Allah, it starts with having this reverence. That anything that you revere and you love the Prophet so much, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that anything that you hear that he did, you just want to do it. And it's really, I'm not saying this is something like a foreign thought. You see my son, subhanAllah, all the different beautiful things that happened in the last 2.5 years. Of course, the difficulty that brothers and sisters are going through Gaza. But at the same time, you see the khair that happened in the ummah. And I see it in my own house. My son, who's 5, 6 years old, he never sleeps without his Palestinian shirt. He wants to sleep with his, he has a little shawl, his shirt, he has his shirt hung up on the wall. And I was like, man, when I was that young, I never even knew about Palestine. Do you understand what I'm saying? As a child at that age, you just have this, and then you know what? SubhanAllah, man. One day, he came out, we walked into the room, and the Palestinian shirt says Pious Palestine in English and Arabic. It was on the ground, and he quickly picked it up. He said, it shouldn't be on the ground. All right? Ajib, like, why? Where did that come from all of a sudden? Where did that come from all of a sudden? I'm not saying that's fard or wajib or sunnah. I'm just saying that's where waqar is. That's where azam. When you start having azamah, then you love. Then you attach things to something that you love and you revere. It happens to people, like you see people that follow these superstars and athletes. They revere them so much. They have so much awe of them that now they're like buying their jerseys, buying their shoes, trying to imitate their celebrations. It sounds so weird. The way they celebrate after, shooting a three, they're trying to imitate everything. Because right after you have this reverence for somebody, the next thing that follows is love. The next thing that follows is what? Obedience, imitation. You want to imitate them. And you look at the lives of Salaf Salihin, brothers and sisters, wallahi, before the Sunnah aspect. Okay, we go to Hajj and Umrah, that's what happens. The reverence starts with, they had so much reverence for the Prophet ﷺ. They loved him so much, and they had so much adab and awe of the Prophet and his Sunnah. One time, I'm going to share a few stories with you. Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi was asked the question, متى سمعت من أيوب السختياني رحمة الله عليه? When did you start studying with this sheikh named Ayub rahmatullahi alayhi? He says, Hajj hajjatain. He says, I did 2 Hajj with him. And فَكُنْتُ أَرْمُقُهُ وَلَا أَسْمَعُ مِنْهُ. I used to observe him, but I never became his student. Okay, this is an interesting thing too, all right? Don't just listen to anybody. Listen to me only, astaghfirullah. All right, I used to observe him, but I never went and became his student. غَيْرَ أَنَّهُ. But then I started observing this man. How is his character? What's his defining? What defines this person? What's the defining quality that he has? غَيْرَ أَنَّهُ كَانَ إِذَا ذُكِرَ نَفْسًا بَكَى حَتَّى أَرْحَمَهُ. He says, man, when the Prophet Prophet's name used to be mentioned in front of him, he would cry till I would have mercy on him. And why are you crying so much for? فَلَمَّا رَأَيْتُ مِنْهُ مَا رَأَيْتُ. When I saw this, وَإِجْلَالَهُ لِلنَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم, and I saw how much he respects and honors the Prophet, كَتَبْتُ عَنْهُ. I started writing hadith from him. And then Imam Malik himself, whenever the Prophet's name would be mentioned in front of him, يَتَغَيِّرَ لَوْنُ. It's as if like, it's when you go to Medina, you guys gone to Umrah before? You feel this in Umrah as well. There's this silence in the Masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. It's in Medina is different. And I'll explain to you why in a few minutes. So Imam Malik used to sit in Medina, and whenever the Prophet's name would be mentioned, something would change in his personality. And then it would become such that people that were sitting in front of him felt like he's going through some grief and pain. One time someone said to him, why does your entire personality change when the Prophet's name is mentioned, as if like you're going through some severe grief? And then he says, لَوْ رَأَيْتُمْ مَا رَأَيْتُ لَمَا أَنْكَرْتُمْ عَلَى مَا تَرَوْنَ. Wallahi, if you've seen the people I saw, you would know why I'm going through this. And he said, لَقَدْ كُنْتُ أَرَى مُحَمَّدٌ مُنْكَدِرٌ وَكَانَ سَيِّدُ الْقُرَى. I used to see Muhammad Munkadir rahmatullahi alayhi, and he was the leader of all Qurra, the leader of all Muhaddithin. لا نكاد نسأله عن حديث أبدا إلا يبكي حتى نرحمه. He said, Wallahi, whenever we would ask him about something the Prophet said, he would start crying. As he's narrating what the Prophet said, he would cry. And listen, may Allah protect all of us from pain. Say Ameen. Habibi, I know people in my life, that whenever they are told to recount or just speak about certain moments in the history, in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, or the lives of Sahaba, every time they mention it, they cry. Every time they mention it, they will cry every single time. You talk about Hussein, they will cry. And then you bring it down to like my mother or my dad, like not even me. Like, I'm not at that level, but my mom, my father, like every single time, they're just sharing a memory, even a good memory of my brother, they would cry. I was drinking tea yesterday, and my mom had tea in her hand, right hand like this, and the kids were playing soccer, and she said, be careful. One time I was drinking tea, and then she started crying. I knew what she was thinking. She was thinking about when she was drinking tea, when Abdul Rahman, my youngest brother, was a baby, and it dropped on him. That's all she was thinking about, and she completed her thought. But why? Because when you have so much love for someone, that love, it fills your heart, and every time you remember that person, that reverence, that honor, that respect you have for that person, it makes you tear up. So he says, وَلَقَدْ كُنْتُ أَرَى جَعْفَرْ بِن مُحَمَّد. Man, this is beautiful. This is for people who are Shaykh Abdullah students. He says, I saw Ja'far bin Muhammad. وَكَانَ كَثِيرُ التَّبَسُّمِ. He used to be a very jolly person. He was a person who used to make people laugh. He was very jolly. فَإِذَا ذُكِرَ عِنْدَهُ النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم إِصْفَرَ لَوْنُهُ. The moment the Prophet's name was mentioned, he had so much reverence and respect for the Prophet ﷺ, the color on his face would change. Right away he would change. So it's not about you can't have a good time. It's about, yes, you could have a good time, but there has to be people and personalities and individuals and certain things in your life that changes the way you are. And the Prophet should be one of them. And he says, وَمَا رَأَيْتُ يُحَدِّثُ عَنْ رَسُولٍ إِلَّا عَلَى طَهَارَةٍ. He said, I had never heard him say in my life that the Prophet said this except for they're on wudu. Now ask the question, is being on wudu fard? Absolutely not. Is being on wudu sunnah? No. But out of respect, they were always in the state of wudu. They would not even speak about the Prophet ﷺ if they were not in the state of wudu. And we know that, of course, we know that you could do dhikr laying down in your bed. You could, I'm giving you a talk right now, you can be sitting like this. However, we know from Waqi' ibn Jarrah, who is the teacher of Imam Shafi'i, Imam Bukhari? Imam Shafi'i, Imam Shafi'i ibn Jarrah, the teacher of Imam Shafi'i, in his majlis, كانوا في مجلسه كأنهم في صلاة. In the gathering, in the class of hadith, they were the people who used to sit there, the Prophet said this, the Prophet did this. It was as if everyone was praying salah. No movement. One time Sa'id ibn Musayyib was laying down in his marad al-wafat. This is when he was about to die. He was so sick. And he was laying down, and someone asked him to ask him a question about something the Prophet said. Fajalasa, he first sat down, he had people hold him up, he put his imama on, and then he said the hadith. And then someone said to him, I'm so sorry I put you through all this difficulty. He says, no problem, كَرِهْتُ أَنْ أُحَدِّثَ عَنْ رَسُولٍ أَنَا مُضْطَجِعٌ. Wallahi, I find this to be disrespectful, that I would speak about the Prophet ﷺ and I am laying down. And one of the craziest, most astonishing, remarkable stories of respecting the Prophet ﷺ in my life I've ever read is the story of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. I'm reading Arabic, I want you to enjoy it with me and take lessons from it. So Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, we know he was in prison, he was tortured, and finally, I'm not going to go over the whole story, finally, we know that the Khulafa Bani Abbas, three. One was Ma'mun, then the second one Mu'tasim, and the third was Wathiq. And so Wathiq was the one who basically released him. So he was then brought to the gathering of Wathiq. And وَنَاظَرَهُمْ, and he debated him. وَهُوَ عَلَى تِلْكَ الْحَالِ, his feet were in chains and shackles, and his hands were in shackles too. وَقَطَعَ حُجَّتَهُمْ, and he dismantled their proofs. وَأَبْطَلَ مَكِيدَتَهُمْ, and he nullified all their schemes. So then, when he was speaking, Wathiq had a soft heart for him. So Wathiq said, he said, look, أَمَرَ أَن يُفَكَّ قَيْدُهُ. He says, you know what? Let his chains be removed. Listen to this. He said, release him. What he's saying is right. فَفُكَّ, then his chains were removed. وَأَخَذَهُ الْإِمَامِ أَحْمَدِ, then Imam Ahmad took those chains. فَنَازَعَهُ إِيَّهُ السَّجَّانِ, the jailer tried to take those chains from him. فَأَمَرَ الْوَاثِقْ أَن يُدْفَعَ الْقَيْدِ إِلَى الْإِمَامِ. He said, because when he took the chains off, he grabbed them and put them in his hands like this. He was holding them. The guard, he tried to take the chains from his hands. Then Imam Ahmad took it back from him. And then the Wathiq said, give it to the Imam, let him take it. Then it was given to him. Then Wathiq asked him, فَسَأَلَهُ الْوَاثِقُ عَنْ سَبَبِ أَخْذِهِ. Wathiq asked him, why do you want these chains for? فَأَخْبَرَهُ, listen to this. He informed him, أَنَّهُ يَنْوِي بِهِ أَن يُخَاصِبَ بِهِ مَنْ ظَلَمُهُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. He says, my intention, I want to keep this with me for the rest of my life, so I can present this to Allah on the Day of Judgment against those who wronged me. And he says, أَقُولْ يَا رَبِّ, I will say, oh Allah, oh my Rabb, سَلْ عَبْدَكَ هَذَا لِمَا قَيَّدَنِي. Ask this servant of yours, why did he imprison me and terrify me? وَوَرَّ عَالِي, why did he terrify me? وَوَلَدِي, my children, وَإِخْوَانِي, my brothers. Why did he put us through all this torture? بِلَا حَقٍ, without any right. وَبَكَى الْإِمَامِ, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal started crying. وَبَكَى الْوَاثِقِ, Imam Wathiq started crying when he said, this is what I'm going to do with these chains. And everyone who was sitting there started crying. Then Wathiq asked him, أَن يَجْعَلَهُ فِي حِلٍّ وَسَاعَةٍ مِمَّا نَالَهُ عَلَى يَدِهِ. He says, please forgive me. Please forgive me. Well, I didn't do what the previous two did. Forgive me, I'm releasing you. فقال Imam Ahmad said to him, Wallahi ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I swear by Allah, لَقَدْ جَعَلْتُكَ فِي حِلٍّ وَسَعَةٍ مِّنْ أَوَّلِ يَوْمٍ. I absolved you and released you and forgave you from the first day. Why? إِكْرَامًا لِرَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم. إِذَا كُنْتَ رَجُلًا مِّنْ أَهْلِهِ. Out of honoring, out of respect for the Prophet of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم, since you're a man from his progeny. You're from Banu Abbas. Imagine Banu Abbas. You are the children of Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet. The Prophet loved his uncle. So out of respect and honor for him, I already forgave you. So it starts with the honoring the Prophet, respecting him. And after that, when you respect him, what happens after that? Right after that, you become a person that immediately when you hear something the Prophet said, there are 3 reasons why when we come back to America, we don't follow the Prophet's Sunnah. You know what the 3 reasons are? The 3 barriers between us and following the Prophet's Sunnah. Number 1, many times it doesn't make sense to us. We use our brain too much. But we're not doing that in Hajj. If you do that in Hajj, your Hajj won't count. But why is it 7 times, not 8 times? Why, if we're gonna pelt shaitan, why not with like bigger rocks? All right? Why are we doing the small rocks for? Why are we staying here for? If you start using your sense and your brain and your intellect, that's the exact opposite of, this is where the first barrier comes. And you look at the Sahaba's life, like one time there was a Sahabi that he saw that he was wearing a khatam min dhahabin. He was wearing a gold ring. And then he said to him, يَعْمِدُ أَحَدُكُمْ إِلَى جَمْرَةٍ مِّن نَارٍ فَيَجْعَلُهُ فِي يَدِهِ. Like, look at you guys. You deliberately take a live coal from the fire and place it in your hand. It's a coal of Jahannam, and you're wearing it in your hand. So that man, this hadith in Muslim, that man then threw the ring. And after throwing the ring, the Prophet left, the ring was on the floor. Someone came to him and said to him, خُذْ خَاتَمَكَ انتفع بِهِ. Go, you can't wear it, but at least you can go sell it. Go take it and benefit from it. He said, well, لا والله, لا آخذه أبدا وقد طرح رسول الله. Wallahi, I'm not going to pick this up again. And why? Because the Prophet threw it. I'm not going to benefit from this. Forget about it. This is not what I'm not going to do this. One time, we know this hadith of Abdul Rahman Waheed that the Prophet is speaking. And he says in his khutbah, he says, Ijlis, sit down. And he was narrating a story. Now, Abdul Rahman is not looking at this narration is about 2 people, Abdullah bin Rawaha and Abdullah bin Mas'ud. When the Prophet is speaking, but saying in one narration, he was just narrating a story. He's saying, this happened, Ijlis. Abdullah bin Mas'ud is coming in from far. Abdullah bin Rawaha has come. The moment they heard the Prophet saying, sit down, they just sat down on the door. And the Prophet says, Zadakallahu tawa'atan fi ittiba'u sallam. May Allah increase you in His obedience to the Prophet sallam. But that's not what the Prophet was saying. He said, come closer. Don't worry about that. And look at, even sometimes the first thing is, it doesn't make sense. That's the first thing, all right? We put our mind too much into it. Like, why should I do this? The second thing is convenience. Second thing is what? Convenience. We're like, but Islam is so easy. Islam is so simple. Why am I putting myself through inconvenience? Then why are you staying in Muzdalifah all night then? Why are you then in the morning in so much, you're putting, in Hajj, you're putting yourself through a lot of inconvenience. You're putting yourself through a lot of inconvenience just to follow the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So the second reason becomes that. And you just like, I'm not sure, should I really do this? The Prophet ﷺ, look at our lives. The Prophet ﷺ sees somebody, once Wa'il bin Hujr, who says, I came to the Prophet ﷺ, I had long hair, and I had long hair, and I also, in one narration, the Prophet ﷺ is talking about another Sahabi, he had long hair, and he was wearing clothes that were below his ankles. And the Prophet ﷺ says, نِعْمَ الْفَتَى سَمْرَةً لَوْ أَخَذَ مِنْ لِمَّتِهِ وَالشَّمَّرَ مِنْ مِئْزَرِهِ. He said, he's a nice person, only if he would cut his hair a bit and raise his shalwar or his pants above his ankles. Raise his garment. And so immediately he did it, he trimmed his hair and raised his garment. Okay, now, you tell, I'm not gonna, forgive me, you guys forgive me? You guys forgive me? Okay. I'm not trying to offend anybody. When you tell someone that the Prophet ﷺ prohibited. Like the Prophet himself never had qaza. He saw a kid who is not even baligh, who's not mukallaf of any rules, a child who's not mukallaf of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's a child. He saw him in a haircut that was uneven, like shaved from here and hair over here. And the Prophet said, why did you cut his hair like this? Okay, that's what he said. So what happens when we hear these ahadith, we're like, well, it must not be for me. You understand what I'm saying? Do you understand what I'm saying? It must not be for me. There must be a different interpretation of that hadith. And we allow our children openly to do those. Have you heard the Prophet? Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Abdul Rahman Waheed was doing ramal. You know what ramal is? What's ramal, guys? But does anyone know what ramal is? Huh? No, ramal is walking fast in tawaf. Okay? So one time he was, and why did the Prophet do this? There's a reason for the Prophet doing this. Okay, there is a reason why the Prophet did it. He came for Umratul Qada. The people of Makkah, they were like, people of Medina are weak now. So the Prophet said, open your right arm and show your biceps, right? But nowadays it's better you don't show it, right? Show your biceps and walk like you're like in the battlefield. Like that's what Ramal is. You walk with, you walk with strength and you walk, that's the first, you're supposed to do that in tawaf. So then someone was saying this to the Abdul Rahman, like, now everyone in Makkah are Muslim. The reason is no longer there. The reason is no longer there. Now, don't overthink it. Oh, there's no non-Muslims here. He said, "Malana wal ramli." He says, you know what? Malana al-yawm wal ramli. Like, it's true. Ramal, the reason why the Prophet did it, that reason is no longer here. ولكن شيء فعلنا مع رسول صلى الله عليه وسلم فوالله ما نحب أن نترك شيئا فعلنا مع رسول صلى الله عليه وسلم. Wallahi, this is something we did with the Prophet ﷺ, and I cannot for 1 second leave something I did with the Prophet ﷺ. لعل خف ناقتي يقع على خف ناقة رسول الله. Hopefully the feet of my camel can fall on the same place where the foot of the camel the Prophet ﷺ went. That's how, when they said, if you saw Abdullah bin Umar anhu, the way he followed the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, if you saw him, the way he followed the Prophet ﷺ, he would say, this man's crazy. But he never left anything. He never left any Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ because out of respect for him. And the second reason is, it doesn't matter if it's convenient or not. It doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. The first reason is what? Makes sense. Second reason is what? Convenience. It becomes a barrier. It becomes a barrier in our mind. This is the convenience. It's not easy, right? And the third reason why this barrier happens, is because we have become people of extreme efficiency. You understand what I'm saying? What does efficiency mean? Amazon Prime. You go to Tim Hortons and there's 5 cars there, I'll never stand there. We want things instantly, okay? We want things right away. And sometimes a sunnah approach in your mind may not be efficient. In your mind. It might not be the fastest way there. There might be a faster way to do the same thing. Example would be, for example, someone is sick. Someone is sick. Going to Flint to visit a sick person will take time. Someone will say to you, just write him a text. Write him a text. It's very quick. Habibi, but writing a text, yes, I could write him a text. But the sunnah of the Prophet is to get up, walk, move towards the sick person. Because it's not just you comforting him, it's you getting the reward as well. Man aada maridan, aw zara akhan lahu fi sabilillah. There is the whole idea of ziyarah akh. Go, move away and go in the path of Allah and visit somebody. One time, now we have this, I'm going to tell you this story, guys. Don't get offended. You guys get offended? I don't care. All right. I'm telling you there's levels. There's levels to this game. There's levels to this stuff. One time when this whole nowadays we have computers and pictures, ChatGPT, all this stuff. When photocopying first came out, So you could just take a letter and you could photocopy it. There's no typing. This happened in India. There was a sheikh named Sheikh Ilyas rahmatullah alayh. So someone came to this person, these people, what they would do, they would write letters, the exact same letter. They would write like 100 letters. And they would then mail the letters to every scholar, every elder in the entire country, scholars all over the world, Yemen, Syria, Jordan, all over the world. They would write them letters, telling them, Shaykh Ilyas would write letters, telling them what he's doing, asking them for dua. The letter was pretty much exactly the same. Ayyuha Shaykh, everything was the same. You know what I'm saying? If it was an elderly person, just the title was different, everything else was the same. So he would write letter, everyone just copy it. So this one dude walks in and he sees these guys writing the same letter. He's like, should I tell you something more efficient than that? Efficient. What's more efficient? He's like, yo, there's a new technology that just came out. And he took them, he said, you put it in there in like 15 minutes. Back in the day, it was probably slower. You put it in 15 minutes, boom, right? It will spit out the 100 same letters and then you can mail them. Oh, that's amazing, but we can't do this until we ask Sheikh. So they came to Sheikh. They said, Sheikh, can we do this? The Sheikh was sitting. And then he got up and he was very angry. He says, you know what the right of our Muslim brother is? We should walk to them. We should put our body through difficulty. We should put our bodies through difficulty to visit them, to invite them, to ask them for du'as. And the least we can do is to, instead of, we can't get our feet tired, we should get our hands tired. You should get our hands tired. It's not about efficiency. It's about the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. It's about the Sunnah. Write letters. Now let me ask you something. Coming back 2026, all right? Let me ask you something. If someone gave you a card which was just bought from Dollar General, right? And just said, congratulations. Does that mean more to you? Or if they got the Dollar General card and wrote something on it with their hands? Which one means more? When you write on it. When you write on it, it means much more to you. Even now, like if you see me, if you see my screen, you see my screen, guys? You see it? What is that? It's a picture of my own handwriting. All right? I have tried this all my life. I have come to the same conclusion. Anything I write, not type. If I write it, I never forget it. Why? Because there's some barakah in writing the Prophet's name versus just copy pasting it. There's barakah in it. Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every time you write his name. I'm not telling you fake stories, brothers and sisters. I know a sheikh. There was a book that was translated into Bangla. I was in Dhaka. I heard this directly from the sheikh. And I'm not saying this makes the sheikh a great scholar. I heard this story directly from the sheikh, rahmatullah, he passed away. He said he was telling a few people in front of him and he was crying when he was saying the story. He was saying that I saw a book that was translated in Bangla and every single place, I saw it a few nights ago, every single place where the Prophet's name was mentioned, it was abbreviated. Sad Lam Ya. And that hurt me. So what I did was I just started, because the guy gave me the book to correct. So I corrected the first one, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Habibi, the book was this thick. I saw the book. Every single place, it was a hadith book. Everywhere the Prophet's name was mentioned, he wrote Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He did that just kept doing that all day. He was correcting, because he felt that he corrected one. No, he just kept doing it. And then the next day, this is the next morning, he says, I saw the Prophet in my dream last night. And he said, may Allah honor your name the way you honored my name. Habibi, these are not things that are made up. Okay, there's truth to these things. There's truth to these things of honoring the Prophet ﷺ and then following his sunnah. You can't just, that's what the Prophet ﷺ in hadith, he says that, the hadith, there's different narrations, but the one that's sahih, man tamassaka bi sunnati inda fasadi ummati falahu ajru shaheedan. A person who holds firmly onto my sunnah at the time of corruption of my ummah. And the ulama, they speak about this in detail. What does fasad ummah mean? Where people take sunnah lightly, where it's not important, The Prophet said, this person will get the ajr of one shaheed. Habiba, radiallahu anha, she heard the Prophet say this once. Now, whether the word, even the hadith has the word tatawwu'. The Prophet said, a person who prays 12 rak'ats tatawwu'an ghayr faridatan. The Prophet said it. This is an optional prayer that is not this is not a fard. Allah banallahu lahu baytan fil jannah. Every single time you pray these 12 sunnah rak'ahs daily, every day that Allah will build for you a house in Jannah. Khalas, a person, Habiba, she says, فَمَا تَرَكْتُهُنَّ مُنْذُ سَمِعْتُهُنَّ مِنْ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. I never left those 12 rak'ahs since I heard the Prophet say this. And the one she told, the Rawi of the hadith is Ambasa. He says, فَوَاللَّهِ مَا تَرَكْتُهُنَّ مُنْذُ سَمِعْتُهُنَّ مِنْ Habiba. Wallahi, the moment I heard this from Habiba, I never left it. And then the Rawi, Amr bin Aus says, the moment I heard this from Ambasa, I never left it. Habib, this was a tradition of the moment you heard the Prophet said this or did this, you never left. And we are living in a time and age where praying sunnah is difficult. People are literally questioning things. I'm not saying it's fard. Did I say it was fard? Was it fard for him to say Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? It's not fard for him. But would you not get more if you honor the Prophet Sallallahu? I'm asking you the question. I'm asking you. You would get more from it. You would honor the Prophet even more. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Did the Prophet wear a turban? Absolutely. I'm not saying you should wear it. Please don't wear a turban, guys. Please. Especially not you guys, for Zayd, for sure, not you. Okay. You shouldn't wear it. I'm just saying, did the Prophet wear a turban? He wore a turban. Did the Prophet do miswak? He did miswak. Did the Prophet sit a certain way? He did. It's not about whether it's fard, whether you will get sin or not. Ibn al-Qayyim, he says something very interesting. He says, the dialogue of a believer has to change. Once you hear that the Prophet did something, you should never ask the question, is it sunnah or wajib? Do I have to do it? But the Prophet did it. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Our teachers would tell us, you should make intention that everything the Prophet did in his life, like in ab'ada even, like he rode a donkey, you should make intention that inshallah one day I'll do that too. Out of respect for the sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He rode a donkey, I'm going to ride a donkey one day. I told Shaykh Hassan when we read, inshallah, one day before I die, hopefully, the Prophet, in one rak'ah, he read Surah Baqarah, Surah Al Imran, Surah An-Nisa, then he went ruku, right? Man, I want to do that at least once in my life. So I want you guys to start thinking like this. Think like the person who's in Hajj about the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And the way that works is you have to increase your respect, your honor for the Prophet ﷺ. And when you do that, inshallah, you'll be among those, the ulama, they write, Man lazima sunnah. ثم مات كان مع النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين وإن كان له تقصير في العمل. A person who dies trying to hold on to Sunnah of the Prophet, he will be resurrected or she will be resurrected among the prophets, among Siddiqeen, among Shuhada, among the pious righteous souls, even if you are deficient in your good deeds. Just hold on to it. Stay firm to it. And there are what our teacher, Mufti Aslam Sahib, used to say something very interesting. He used to say, look, when a person loses respect for Sunnah, they're missing out on so many good deeds that are very easy to do. You're not going to be judged by eating with your right hand with the food that's close to your plate. Are you going to be judged by that? There's no Islamophobia for that. You're eating at home. The food is close to you. You're not going to be judged by walking into your house with your right foot, walking out with your left foot. Walking out of the masjid with your left foot, walking with your right foot. These are things you want to be more diligent with. Receiving with your right hand, giving with your right hand. These are things that the Prophet did, sallallahu. These are in the Shaykh used to say, a person who will become steadfast and consistent with, remember last week we spoke about major and minor sins? The word we're using, quote unquote, smaller sunnah, but there's no sunnah that's small. I'm just saying the things that are easier, the Shaykh said, a person who can be firm on that, Allah will give him tawfiq to follow the sunnahs that are even more difficult. But if you can't stay firm on that, then how is Allah going to give you tawfiq to follow the sunnahs that are even more difficult? So may Allah give us tawfiq to act upon these things and be among those who honor the Prophet ﷺ and his sunnah. Be among those that, when we die, we tried our best to follow the Prophet ﷺ. On the Day of Judgment, there are going to be people that honor the Prophet so much, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the Prophet will honor them. Then there are another group of people that we إِنَّكَ لَا تَدْرِي مَا أَحْدَثُ بَعْدَكَ. The angels will say to the Prophet ﷺ, these were your ummatis, but they never followed your path. They never took your path. Do what the Prophet did. Think, what would the Prophet do in the situation? And khalas, that's it. Don't even think about it. Whether it's convenient, whether it makes sense, whether it's efficient. Just do it. Because the Prophet did it. Because the Prophet said this. Nobody thinks about those three things in Hajj. You do the more inconvenient. Didn't the Prophet walk from here to here? Yes, I'm going to walk. Didn't the Prophet do this? I'm going to do this. Okay, then that same mindset, inshallah. And it's a beautiful thing that we do in Hajj. For people that do this, or something that I thought about when I was there. But we should continue doing this while we're here. After Salah, now write down, what are the 12 rakats that we should never miss? What are the 12 rakats a day? Which ones are they? 2 rakats before? Fajr. What else? 4 rakats before? Dhuhr. 2 rakats after? Dhuhr. How many is that? 8. Then 2 rakats after? Maghrib. And then 2 rakats after? Isha. It's 12 rakats. How? That's not difficult. Just do it. Just do it every single day of your life. Now that you heard it, never leave it. Because the Prophet said, person who does it, Allah will build him a house in Jannah. These are simple things, but the ones who do it, inshallah, the reward is not going to be simple, it's going to be magnificent, inshallah. May Allah make it easy for all of us. I want you guys to share what I said with the people next to you. Inshallah, do that for a few minutes and go over it and take some, go back home with some takeaways. Please talk to the person next to you. Jazakallah khair.